What is up, guys? I hope you're well. My name is Mark and today we're covering more r/JustNoHOA. If you're new here, please consider hitting that like, the subscribe button and that notification bell if you enjoy the content, of course, and don't forget to support the music artists because they're just amazing and help this channel out massively. And with that being said, let's get into today's stories. Our first story is from Starling Plus Love. HOA unfairly fines my aunt for not shoveling her sidewalk. Since it's winter in the northern hemisphere and we're getting our fair share of snow, I have a story from my aunt. My aunt lives in the gated community in the PNW. She's at a higher altitude, so she gets a bit of snow. She is a nice lady, very active and always helps other people. Her HOA is a drinking club, as she describes them, have a whole bunch of rules, some totally ridiculous. Heavily enforced and always changing. Usually when rules are changed, they get posted on some online community bulletin board from the days of dial-up. Also, they like to fine and shame people. My aunt never attended meetings because she has no time for drinking and cigarettes. As per usual with a lot of bylaws, you have to clear the sidewalk in front of your house of snow and ice. My aunt, being the woman she is and living in a 55 plus community, she always shovels her walk and salts it for ice. A couple of years ago there was a heavier than usual snowfall, maybe over 20 inches in the higher elevations, with some warm days then freezing temperatures for a few days after. So first snowfall, she gets up early and shovels her sidewalk and her walk and sprinkles down some salt. It snows a few inches more, so in the later afternoon she shovels the walk again and decides to salt again. She literally said she tossed a few handfuls of salt and the neighbour across the street comes running out demanding she stop salting and it's a violation of HOA rule whatever crap. It seems that a no salt rule was added to their book of great HOA rules. Reasoning is that salt crystals are unsightly and posted on the unusable online bulletin board from 1999, which at this point the online bulletin board had been replaced by an under maintenance error page for the past few months. So there was no way the drunken HOA rule changes could be relayed to the commoners. Well, my aunt apologises, gets a warning for the first time she salted, and a second for the handful of salt she applied in the second salting, and then another warning for not properly clearing the sidewalk. Well, my aunt left maybe a strip of about 2 to 3 inches for about 2 feet on the edge of her sidewalk, which wasn't properly cleared of snow. Not a big deal, she made an excellent effort, but the HOA neighbour didn't think so. Next violation would be a fine. Also, she had to clean up all the rock salt with a broom. My aunt ended up getting the new HOA rules in writing from the HOA neighbour, which she read over, and realised they only stated salt in the sidewalk snow shovelling rule, but nothing that blue salt free ice melt. Also was stated that the sidewalk should stay free of ice at all times. Also, she read a bit deeper to learn that street and sidewalk clearing is covered by the HOA twice a year or as needed, instead of risking HOA wrath of fines and some public shaming, because now it's near impossible to prevent the sidewalk from freezing up. She decides she will challenge the vodka-induced reasoning of the HOA and will use the blue non-salt ice melt to keep her sidewalk ice-free. The next day, after an overnight snowfall, she heads to the local hardware store to buy some blue non-salt ice melt. Strikes up a conversation with the shop owner about her issue, who recommends these blue ice melting pellets and throws in a bag of clay kitty litter on the house so she can stick it to them idiots. That afternoon the temp rises just above freezing and there is a heavy wet snowfall of a few inches, which hits the ground wet, melts and refreezes when temperatures go below freezing at night time. So instead of risking having a skating rink for a sidewalk, she clears the wet snow and then dumps a bunch of these blue ice melting pellets and a whole bunch of kitty litter. Overnight it freezes. Next day she has the most ice-free sidewalk in all of the neighbourhood and is covered in ice melt pellets. Well, it rains that day, her use of kitty litter and blue ice melt pellets don't go unnoticed by HOA neighbour. That afternoon she is fined by the HOA officer in charge of fines for breaking rule #vodka section, stale cigarette smoke. She sees nothing wrong, the road is salted and sanded, looks like a mess, so her sidewalk doesn't look too bad, all blue and grey speckled and ice free. Then gets a notice to clean up the salt, which she ignores because it's not salt she is using to de-ice her sidewalk, but blue salt free ice melt pellets and clay kitty litter. Then that day it rained, then froze and continued to rain then snow, causing everything to be covered in ice and snow the next morning. It was a disaster. My aunt cleared the snow from her sidewalk and applied more blue pellets and kitty litter, which wasn't a task because luckily she had already applied so much that there was no ice on her sidewalk or snow. Everyone else in the neighbourhood had to chip the underlayer of ice after they risked a horrific fall while clearing up the top layer of snow. She then was fined again, while neighbours had to actually walk in the messy street in some parts because sidewalks in some spots were unwalkable. Warnings and fines were given to other unsuspecting neighbours who couldn't attend the HOA booze meetings and had mistakenly used salt or had not chipped and cleared all the sidewalk ice in an acceptable amount of time. The next few days were blue skies and below freezing with ice everywhere. Sidewalks had been chipped but iced up over time with a thin layer of slick ice called black ice. People were falling, and my aunt now had a couple of rogue neighbours using all types of non-salt ice melt. One guy made a solution of brine and molasses, which he sprayed on and got great results. Others used sand, brine, non-salt ice melters, and even 15 gallons of wine, which turned to vinegar, was applied. The HOA's alcohol consumption probably increased as the officer fell on a patch of black ice out front of his home, breaking his elbow while returning from delivering fines, warnings, and general nastiness. Eventually the weather returned to above freezing levels and rain which washed away all the various ice melting substances. The rogue neighbours gathered at my aunt's house enjoying tea and snacks. Amongst them was a man who used brine and molasses, who happened to have a licence to practice law and was retired with nothing else better to do than ruin the drunk and useless HOA at the next meeting. He then invited himself to the next meeting with a file folder of all the fines and warnings with a statement of dispute for each one. Also brought his tablet to prove online bulletin board wasn't working, which helped the case that the HOA wasn't providing proper means of communication to the residents, which meant the residents could sign a petition to fire the standing HOA members and appoint an interim HOA till the election. My aunt was appointed the treasurer. Found the previous regime spent HOA funds at a liquor store, the retired lawyer president, who then went after the previous HOA for funds spent on booze, and then they lived happily ever after. How insane is that story? It's snowing, it's incredibly dangerous out, and they're worried about ice being unsightly on the path. What kind of mentality is that? What kind of insaneness happens at this HOA shit? It's so crazy. Like from the last video, some of your stories that you put in the comments about how HOA harass people and things, it's insane. I can't believe that sort of stuff happens. It's just so crazy. Our next story is from Carrie. Dad passed away. His condo HOA sent me a nasty letter since I'm not 55 plus. My dad passed away unexpectedly last spring, and I was the executor of his estate. My mum passed 2 years earlier, and I didn't know Dad updated his deed after Mum died to a ladybird deed, transferring the condo to my sister and I equally when he died. This meant we did not have to go to probate court. Thank God. It's good to know that the deed immediately updated in the county record system upon his death, and our county allows public searches of these records. His condo was in the over 55 community common in Florida, and I lived about 15 minutes away from him. Despite the death being unexpected, I was able to clean out the condo, freshen it up, do some repairs, donate, list and sell items, distribute family pieces to other family members, hire a realtor, and list it within 3 weeks of his passing. This was no small feat, as I work full time for a tech startup, so many work hours. I'm a single parent and my sister lives in the Midwest. The first thing I had to do was get the death certificate and deed to submit it to the HOA and security office to have my name and phone number as the owner at the guarded gatehouse, so I'd be called when contractors, donation centres and potential buyers went there. The HOA was aware of the death, they had a copy of the certificate. A month after his death, 1 week after the condo went on the market, I get a nasty letter from HOA demanding proof that I'm 55 plus because blah blah blah, our community, blah blah, standards, rules. I ignored the letter because nothing I'd respond with would be productive, and I wanted not to make waves when it came time for a buyer to get approved by the HOA. 4 months later, we get a buyer, go into contract, and she submits a HOA application, and we wait. Week 1, week 2, week 3, no response from the HOA. My realtor, the buyer's agents, and the buyer all call and email asking for an update with no response. Every month I'm paying bills out of his account, including HOA fees, renewed property insurance, and had to stop over there every few days to make sure all was good. My grief was coming out sideways since I didn't really address it. I focused on the estate tasks. I finally had enough. Here are some snippets of the email I sent to HOA when I again request an update on the approval. This was the only thing holding up the closing. HOA has absolutely no problem sending a terribly cruel and insensitive letter to me asking for proof that my sister and I are over 55 to have a right to own the property in community. Sending that letter soon after his death unconscionable. However, your team can't be bothered to answer emails and return calls. HOA and Property Management Co. know that the property was transferred as part of a death, because I went to the HOA office to update the owner record and security office, and to do so, I had to provide a copy of the death certificate in both instances. Your office knows the unit is on the market because my realtor provided her information to security. There is a lockbox on the door and the security logs show numerous showings. You know it's on the market because I paid $50 for the budget, financials and HOA documents from your office to give my realtor. At the time I received the letter, the property was already on the market. Dad passed away on this date, and I had that condo on the market the first week of May. I've done everything in my power to get it on the market and in contract with a 55-plus-year-old buyer to stay within your guidelines. Could you personally turn around an estate while grieving so fast? I did, and I'm trying to finalise this last piece of the estate so my family can start closing this open wound. Whoever is monitoring deed transfers need to do the morally right thing and double check that you're not sending nasty grams to relatives of the deceased so soon, and cross check to see if that relative is doing their level best to sell the property. A simple realtor or Zillow search will show it's on the market, or maybe just talk to the people within your office. This is a senior community, and I cannot be the first or only executor of an estate that was passed to someone under 55. This can't be new for this area. Or maybe I'm rare seeing as both my parents are gone before I even turned 44. Please note that my parents didn't have a mortgage. This sale is all profit for the estate. I could have put the condo on the market at a lot lower price, which would guarantee a quicker sale, but I didn't want to hurt property values and comps for the neighbours surrounding my dad, who were very good to both my parents. This buyer is buying it for $90,000 more than my parents did in 2010. You'll see that I've not paid the November HOA payment since our closing date should have been in October if your team had turned this around in an appropriate time frame. You can get November's prorated portion of the HOA fee from me and the buyer during the closing. Want your money? Do your job and send the approval letter, and I will be able to complete my job by ensuring someone who is 55 plus owns the property. This fucker sent the letter via email within an hour of my email. No message in the body of the email, just the approval letter attached. The day of the closing, I did give the daytime security guard a thank you card with a gift card for all the help and extra work created by having tons of businesses and buyers through the gate. She actually saw me an hour after he died when I ran over there to get items for the funeral home. I'll always remember her kindness each time she'd see me. Well, at least there's one nice person in that estate. Jesus Christ. How can people be so heartless, like, when there's a death of the family? How can people not understand the grief they'd be going through? And then to treat them like that and ignore emails, and still at the very end not turn around and apologise for being absolute bastards. What a bunch of bloody Burks. This next one is from LNRI. Is mandatory church attendance even legal? Small HOA here in South Carolina. They've imposed a new bylaw which states all HOA members must attend the HOA's neighbourhood church on Sundays. The sermon starts at 6 AM and the letter says we are required to attend until sundown every Sunday. We're required to donate 10% of income to this new church that was built in the community. The HOA president is super religious and is also the preacher. The letter is requiring women to keep their heads covered when in church. This is outrageous. What should I do? Oh my god, is that even legal? Is it legal? That can't be legal, especially if it's a new church that's just been built. You can't suddenly surely build a building and say, this is the church, now you have to give 10% of all your income and attend for the whole Sunday. What the fuck? That is insane. And our final story is from Motive Lobros, being considered an unauthorized boarder. Well over a decade ago, I was forced to move back in with my dad. I was only planning to stay a few months till I was financially stable enough to get my own place once again, but my dad insisted I stay rent free while I got my car paid off and some serious dental work done. This lasted 4 years. My dad owns a real nice place in a subdivision that had an HOA. For about 2 of those 4 years, things went fine, until a woman who I should aptly call Karen became head of the HOA. Me and Karen had many unfortunate run-ins in the past. She would constantly ask my dad how long until I move out. Then she would always report me and my dad to the HOA for the silliest things, which the HOA would usually ignore, or at best dismiss, after getting our side of the story. But now that she was in control, she took direct action. The first was to declare me an unauthorized boarder after instituting a bylaw that all adults 21 and over in a household have to be registered with a HOA as a permanent resident. With a minimum of 5 years, they have to stay without penalising the homeowner. My dad refused to do such a thing because I would eventually be getting my own place, but Karen insisted, even serving him 2 years of backdated penalties for having me there. My dad ended up having to spend money on a lawyer to send her a cease and desist order because I was legally grandfathered in, since I was there before the bylaw. Of course the fines were begrudgingly dropped, but afterwards she would try to nickel and dime my dad with constant little things, like me being out all hours of the night, I worked late, or the way I dressed in public being inappropriate, jeans and band t-shirts mostly, and other crap that most of which weren't in bylaws. She even took to using a selfie stick over the fence to see if there was anything in the backyard violating the rules. I since moved out of there, and a year or so later, Karen was voted out of the HOA after pissing off the wrong people. Oh my god. These stories, they're just crazy. How can they make these laws and try and backdate them and things? Like, your father is trying to look after you, and this woman is just trying to absolutely ruin that. How can that be possible? Is this serious? Oh my god. Guys, I'd love to hear your opinions on any of those, because I can't get over how crazy this is. You know, I'm from the UK. We don't have, well, as far as I know, we don't have this kind of crap here. But after reading several of these stories, it just blows my mind how insane this whole thing is. And people making their own little laws up in these little communities. It's like little tribes. It's an absolute madness. Oh my god. If you do enjoy these stories, don't forget to comment, like and subscribe, because it really helps this channel out. And I know I say this all the time, but it really, really does. Thank you so much, guys, for being here, for your time out your day. It's always appreciated. Take care now. Much love.